Hello, everybody. It's your girl, Marcy Thomas, and I am so excited to be back with you for another episode of the BGC Book Club. So, just so you know, this one was pre recorded. So, for those of you who like to come in and leave comments or ask questions, unfortunately, you won't be able to do that in real time, but I still suggest that you leave comments and questions and things like that for our special guest because I want to make sure that she goes back and has a chance to look at them. So I am coming to you from the outskirts of Atlanta, Georgia, originally from Cleveland, Ohio, and a bunch of other places that I've lived in between. And our special guest is coming to us from Sweden, which is part of the reason why we had to do this early. So the last time you saw her, she was with me to talk about In Every Mirror She's Black and Everything Is Not Enough. And Lọlá Ákínmádé is back with us to talk about her forthcoming book as of the time of this recording, and that is Bitter Honey, which will be out here in the U.S. on November the 4th. Now, she is an award-winning travel writer, speaker, photographer, and author of international bestsellers, which I've already shared with you, based in Stockholm, Sweden, and she's back with us again to talk about her forthcoming book, which I'm gonna tell y'all, I devoured it in less than 24 hours. So I'm sure you all will enjoy it as well. So without any further delay, let's welcome Lọlá Ákínmádé back to the BGC Book Club. Welcome, Lọlá.
Thank you so much, Marcy. It's always great to be back, and it's great to see you again. Thank you.
Yes, great to see you again. You know, we changed up our hair. We might look a little different from the
I
last time. But
Yes.
it's good to have you back. Good to have you back.
Thank you.
And I am so excited about Bitter Honey. As I told you before we came on, I devoured the book. I love the book. I can't wait for other people to get a chance to read it. And yeah, congratulations, first and foremost.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you so much. I mean, this book is my own personal favorite book. I think I poured my heart, everything I had into writing this book, so it means a lot to me.
Yes, yes. And I'm sure it's going to mean a lot to the people who get to read it. Now, of course, in your first two books, a lot of the story, well, the two stories went together, of course, but it was taking place pretty much in, present time, contemporary times. But in this case, you've done something a little different. So tell us what's different about Bitter Honey.
Yes, absolutely. So, Bitter Honey is my first kind of foray into historical fiction, a little bit of historical fiction. And so it covers 4 decades, starts in the 70s, ends in the early 2000s. And I wanted to kind of mine that time era with lots of rich stories, of people kind of moving from Africa to the diaspora and kind of set it against the backdrop of world events. So
Yes.
this was really quite exciting, to research and to pick what events I wanted to be the backdrop of this book as well. So
Yes. Yes. And you definitely does starting like is it in the 70s, I believe, and going up to the early 2000s or about the 2010s is where it ends.
yes,
But
yes.
and it's the story of a mother and a daughter, a family story, but it's, as you mentioned, it's all the things that are going on around them, at the same
Yes.
time. Because really, when we think about our lives, I mean, I'm gonna take it right now to 2025. I have my life, you have your life, we have our family, but then
Hmm.
there's all this other stuff that's going on in the world around us that can have an
Exactly.
impact on how we live and how we function.
Yes, no, absolutely. And I wanted to show, you know, I think this book is about giving our mothers grace, right? Because I wanted to
Mm,
show what it's like, you know, because when we think of our mothers or kind of these maternal figures that have been in our lives or are still in our lives, we always see them in a certain lens in relation to kind of how they came into our lives, right? So they'll
right,
always be mom, but you don't think of them as this young, vibrant woman that was maybe boy crazy, that was having
right.
sex, that was doing things, that will kind of make us shy, like, no, mom. And so I wanted to, so I wanted to write about, Nancy's story coming to Sweden in the 70s as this bright, doe-eyed student with, big aspirations of becoming this political powerhouse
Yes.
coming in the 70s and then contrasting that with her daughter in the early 2000s who is already on her way to becoming a superstar and then mirroring and showing how kind of generational trauma can be passed, can also manifest itself in different ways. And so I wanted
Mm,
to write that story about a mom and a daughter, and the secrets between them, and you know how the mom is trying to protect the daughter in a way that's actually detrimental to their
mm.
relationship as well.
Hmm. Yeah, and that is something that's really relatable. Of course, the situation itself is different. Everyone's situation is different, but then it's also relatable because number one, oftentimes we don't like to think of our moms and who they were before they became our moms.
Yes,
And they are whole
yes.
human beings, and you wouldn't be
Hmm.
here if mom wasn't having sex with somebody.
Exactly.
So there's that.
Exactly.
There's
Yes.
that. And then,
Yes.
mothers deciding, hey, maybe there's certain things that because it was hurtful to me or traumatic for me,
Mm.
I don't want my children to know about it. But then what does that look like when you aren't honest with your children about your past? So I think that's pretty powerful in the way that you did this.
Yeah,
Now, of
thank you.
course, Nancy is from Gambia, right? Now you are from Nigeria. So from the standpoint of having to like learn and
Yes.
study, did you really what was it that made you choose the time frame of 1978 to start the book? And why Gambia? Because
Mm.
you could have started, picked another country, you could have picked another time. What was
Exactly.
it that really drew you to this particular point in time?
Absolutely. So Nancy and Tina are actually like Easter eggs in my other books, right? So even though this book is totally standalone, has really nothing to do with the other books, there is a character in my previous books called Tobias, and his
Yes.
mother is Nancy, and his sister
Okay.
is Tina. And so very early on in Every Mirror She's Black, Tobias was on a date with Kemi and was saying, "Oh, my mom moved from Gambia when she was in her early 20s, and that's where she met my father, who was a professor." And this is not giving away any spoilers. You find
No.
everything out, first two pages, right? And so right there, I was already limited to where Nancy could come from
Gotcha.
because Tobias
Gotcha.
is Gambian Swedish, right? And so that was already the limit. And if I was looking at the time period, I'm like, if Tobias is this age, around this time, then that means I need to go back to when she might have been 20, which would be around the 70s, you know.
Gotcha.
And so that's where, okay, it has to be the 70s. But also, what was great was because I was looking at major events between those years, I was actually just shifting the timeline. I was like, okay, I want this story to intersect with this coup going on. Okay, let me
Gotcha.
shift everything 1 year. Okay, well, I need this to intersect with this Nobel Prize dinner or this, that, or and so that's how I was shifting things to find the right, perfect kind of timeline. And then the book is filled with Mandinka and Wolof. So those are
Yes.
indigenous languages to Gambia. I don't speak Mandinka, I don't speak Wolof. So what I
Wow.
did, yeah, I know, right? So what I did was, first of all, I researched and found different phrase books. Then I
Mm-hmm.
went through all the phrases and picked out the ones I actually liked, right? I said,
Okay.
oh, this phrase sounds right. And so I said, okay, all these phrases, I need to somehow work them into the book. And then I worked with, I have lots of Gambian friends, so I had them proofread those phrases. They sent it to like a linguist to take a look at those. And even though I'm a travel writer and I spend a lot of time in different countries,
Yes.
for me to write a place as authentically as I can, I really have to be there because I have to
Mm-hmm.
be there and sense it with all my senses and describe it. But I haven't been to Banjul yet, Gambia.
Oh,
So that
okay.
was why, yeah. So that was why most of the story happened in Sweden, and Nancy was on the phone to her family.
Right. Hey,
And
that's smart.
yes, because I could have just researched it, but for me
Hmm.
to really, because I am a travel writer, that's what I do that quite well. And so that's why I can write Stockholm in a very rich, sensory way. But for me to do that justice to Gambia, I have to spend time there. And because I hadn't done it as of when this book was written, I
Hmm.
just kept a lot of it on the phone and then virtual.
Oh, well, that makes a lot of sense. That makes a lot of sense. So we see Nancy. Well, we're going to start with her because she is the
Yes.
matriarch in this story.
Yeah.
Now she is a young lady who really wants to do some things, some big things with her life. And like a lot of African immigrants end up in Sweden and other places because they're going for the education. And she is no different. So she lands there as a young lady going for her education, but she also has family that lives there.
Yes.
Her aunt Yaya.
Yes. Yeah, no, absolutely. And I wanted to create that dynamic where she wasn't going to be there all alone, but at the
Mm-hmm.
same time she was staying with family that had already assimilated in a different way. So you could
Mm-hmm.
see through the book kind of all the challenges Yaya went through and her own mental state,
Mm-hmm.
through the
Mm-hmm.
book. But then I also wanted Nancy to still feel sort of alone so that
Yeah.
it's easy for her to be preyed on by
Yeah.
someone that knows our culture very well, right?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And so that was kind of how, she started school and, she met one of my favorite characters, Malik, and then, and that's how
Everything
Malik
happened.
stepped into the picture. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Professor.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. We're gonna get into it. So yes, of course, Nancy is a young, beautiful woman in the 70s.
Yes.
Rocking her afro and all of these things. This
Yes.
African queen or African princess
Yes.
who has these great
Yes, yes.
aspirations. So she's going there to study international relations of all things. So I
Yes,
mean, she's
yes.
got these big goals and dreams, and that just in and of itself is very inspiring to see this young woman at this time saying, "Hey, I want to do some big things in my future, and so I'm going to go and get the education that I need to do that." So she moves there. She goes to school. She's having to learn the language. So through that, she's placed in a situation where she meets Malik and
Yes.
Lars, who is her instructor, who is helping them to kind of navigate being there in the country. So Lars is definitely he is. You said he's one of your favorite characters, but he is an interesting character.
No, no,
We're
no,
gonna.
Malik. Malik. No, no,
Oh,
no, no. I
Malik.
said
Okay, I was
Malik.
about to say not Lars,
Oh my
Malik.
Lord,
Okay, let's
no.
get straight. Yeah,
No.
Lars, not
No,
Lars.
Malik.
Okay, well,
Malik.
the
No,
people
no.
may have something to say about that,
Absolutely not.
but yes, but Malik, he is such a joy. So tell us a little bit about him because I enjoyed reading about him and just the type of a brother that he was.
Yes. So I thought of my dad and my uncles, right? Like in the 70s when you see the pictures of the guys with their kind of little afro, they've got the
Mm-hmm.
shirts, with the white collars, maybe buttoned down a little bit with their
Mm-hmm.
little bell bottoms, maybe posing next to a Trans Am or Mustang or
Yes.
those cars, right? And so there
Mm-hmm.
was a bit of bravado, there was a confidence, there was a way they carried, themselves in that era that became threatening to those in power. And that's what happens is when you are confident, when you move with grace and space, and society says, "How dare you?"
Mm-hmm.
Your being just becomes threatening to those
Right.
in power, and they're
Yes.
going to try and do everything they can to try and put you in your place or at least get rid of you, right? And
Mm-hmm.
so that character Malik was just me imagining what my dad and my uncles
Oh,
were like in that
I love
time,
that.
just cool and confident and, just moving that way.
I love that. Yes, and that he is, and we're not gonna. Well, for anybody who hasn't watched before, we're not gonna give you spoilers. We're just giving you like some
Yes,
appetizers so you can know. But we're not gonna spoil your appetite for wanting to read the book, right?
yes, yes,
So,
yes,
she meets him, and of course, he comes from a powerful family. He's got this look, and it's kind of natural that they would be drawn to each other, that they're from the same place and all of that. So they meet, and, again, they are, students together learning at this university. But then Lars is the one who's kind of helping them navigate the way. And
yes.
now you say he's not your favorite, which I'm happy to hear that
No, no,
because
no,
he's
it's
a
not.
mess.
Oh, no.
Because he is a mess, as we find out
No.
along the way. But
Yes,
when we first meet him, what makes
yes,
him so interesting is that he's able to connect with these students, not just because of his, role as a professor, but also because he's really studied the culture. So that is a big
Yes.
through line that plays throughout the story in him and his connection to the culture.
Yes. Yes. No, absolutely. And whether we like to admit it or not, if somebody that's not from your culture, that grew up your culture, comes to you speaking your language fluently, it actually lets you like, wow, this is quite cool that you spend time learning my indigenous culture, right? If they come to
Hmm.
me speaking two of my indigenous languages, then I'm like, okay, what's going on?
Right,
Why do you,
right,
right?
right.
But it was very easy for him to come into that fold. I mean, he speaks, this is a white man that is an anthropologist that, spent time in Gambia and Senegal and really studied the two indigenous languages to be able to speak it fluently. And so it was easy for him to kind of sip into the cracks and become friends that you can trust. I mean, if she wants to share feelings, this is a man she can actually speak to in her own language,
Hmm.
right? About her
Hmm.
feelings. And
Hmm.
outside of Yaya and Malik is the only other person in that circle. And so
Right.
what I yeah, and so one of the things I wanted to show with that dynamic is sometimes um, when somebody you've known as a friend has been kind for so long, it can
Hmm.
actually change the way you see them because then
That's
you're
true.
not sure. I'm like, do I really like this friend? Is there feelings? Does it really like it starts to distort
Mm.
kindness from weird places can distort the way you think about that
Hmm.
place, about that person. And so that's what I wanted to do with Laj. I wanted to really um, and without giving too much spoilers, I wanted to write a textbook narcissist. How would that person play out on the
Hmm.
page in
Hmm.
different contexts?
Hmm. He definitely was a narcissist. And again, part of the reason why I got through this book so quick is I was like, what this fool doing? What? Like, what is he doing? What is he
Yes,
saying? Like, what is happening here?
yes, yes,
So, we are watching, this whole thing kind of play out over time. And again, no spoilers. So the book
yes,
is written in dual timeline. So it's like we are seeing things happening with Tina, and then we're kind of seeing the backstory of what's going on with Nancy at the same time. So before we introduce Tina a little more, how was that for you in the telling of the story to be able to, because like one chapter is one person, the other chapter is the other
mm,
person. In some cases you might get two back to back with one and then it goes to the
yes,
other. So from a writing
yes.
perspective, how challenging was that for you?
So that was actually quite easy for me because I'd already written in Every Mirror She's Black and Everything Is Not Enough, which are three perspectives, kind of very different women that are not even family, they don't interact much, and still keeping those stories. So, in a sense, switching between Nancy and Tina was quite easy because
Mm-hmm.
it was just two timelines. But what was great is I had to kind of, their timelines had to meet at some point,
Yes.
and so that was where was I won't say the challenge, but the great thing was then shifting things. Okay, like, well, she needs to meet at this point. Okay, this can happen yet. Let me move it a year before. So that was the fun part, so that they could all converge at that kind of pivotal moment in the book. And yeah, so it was great to write that. And I think writing Nancy's story for me, I was writing all of that when I was going through my own personal divorce. Then it
Mm.
made me realize that even though it's not my story, it's not of my own life, but what mirrors is if life doesn't go the way you planned,
Right.
can you
Right.
still pick up the pieces and still create something beautiful?
Right.
Right? Nobody goes into a relationship thinking it's never gonna last, right? So
Right.
if life derails you, how can you pick up the pieces and still create something really beautiful, worth
Mm-hmm.
living and still be yourself again? So that was Nancy's story when I was kind of writing that. I was pulling from that part of my life.
Okay, okay. Well, thank you for
Yeah.
sharing that because it is something just to look at her life and say, hey, yeah, as we already said, she had these big goals and dreams, and she gets here, and there are some things that happen along the way that take her on
Yes.
a different path. But and what does that
Yes.
look like? That how does that impact you? How do you bounce back from that? All those sorts of things. So that's
Yeah.
pretty powerful, and that the timing worked out that it mirrored some things in your own life. Now,
Yes.
her baby girl, Tina, when we
Mm-hmm.
first meet her, it's 2006, and she's like 20 years old, about 20 years old when we meet
Mm-hmm.
her. And has a different story because, she is the daughter, and when we are, this isn't giving anything away. We know who she's the
Yes.
daughter of. And
Yes.
she is navigating her way in a new career and trying to figure out who she is. And then there are some secrets that she ultimately finds out that really changed her life. But just tell us about what you were thinking, or the crafting of Tina and at
Yes.
that stage of her life.
No, absolutely. So, first of all, you can imagine how challenging it is for an author to give you the entire story in the first 2 pages because you
Yeah.
know exactly what has happened. And
Right.
then I have to keep your interest for
Right.
400 more pages.
Right. Right.
So you already know within the first 2 pages what happened, right? So
Right.
now it's about rewinding. And so what I wanted to show with Tina is somebody that's still kind of struggling with identity because
Mm-hmm.
she is mixed. She takes her features from her dad, and she, to some extent, can pass a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
And she's still figuring out who she really is. And in addition to that, she's young. And in
Mm-hmm.
addition to that, she's about to take on the biggest stage, music stage in the world. So she also
Right.
has to have an ego. Because if
Yes.
she doesn't have an ego, then she's not believable as a pop star that's about to,
Right.
you know, strut. So she's a character that a lot of people found like very frustrating. But
Mm-hmm.
if I didn't make her
Mm-hmm.
that way, then she wouldn't be
Mm-hmm.
believable because she's young,
Mm-hmm. Right. Yeah.
and she has an
Yeah.
ego and she's yeah. So I wanted to turn our world upside down and say, how can you, as a young person, when your world turns upside down, how do you learn? Do you reach out to your elders for advice? Do you and a lot of people go through this in their 20s when they're just trying to figure out what they're doing, making mistake upon mistake, ending up with the wrong people after the wrong person. And so that's what
Mm-hmm.
I wanted to show with Tina's story.
Yes, and you're right. She is frustrating at times
Yes.
because it's like,
Very.
girl, there are some times when
I
people are
know.
saying, don't, like, don't go in that door. She's like, oh, I'm going in that door,
Yes, yes, yes.
sort
And
of
there is
thing.
actually a scene. There is a scene in the book where she says something to Nancy, and you could feel Nancy like hold her fingers in a fist to stop from like slapping her because that kind
Mm-hmm.
of pat, which is a very
Mm,
African pat that just boom slaps you quickly. She just had to hold. So so Tina is she's a character that evokes kind of strong emotions because she's like a petulant child trying to
mm,
figure out, who she is. So,
mm-hmm. Yeah, definitely, and really, and from that perspective, both her and Nancy are going through this whole growing pains because they're both in and around the same age when we first meet them. So we're
yes.
just seeing like the differences in their lives because
Mm,
of, they're different because one has one backstory and another has a different backstory, but
yes.
yet even within there, they still kind of make some similar mistakes though
Mistake. Yeah. No,
along the way.
absolutely. Absolutely. And I think one thing that was great to show their stories at that kind of age is just how technology and time and like evolution of society has given words to things that maybe your mom was experiencing, in the past.
Mm-hmm.
So Tina had the words and language where like when she was finding out all these things, she's like, oh, is this guy this? Did he do this to you? Like, did he like she had the language now that
Mm-hmm.
maybe our parents or people in the past didn't have the same access to stand for themselves or to be more vocal about their rights, So that again showed that difference, but also in the sense of Tina was obviously had daddy issues. So she's,
Daddy issues.
so that's what draws her to some questionable relationships. Whereas Nancy was too trusting, I guess,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
and yeah. So
Yeah, it was just definitely interesting to see them navigate life and relationships. Now, one thing I noticed, they didn't necessarily have female friends, not really. There were a lot of
yes,
men in their lives, but you didn't see like a lot of other women friends who sometimes your sisters will like get you together sometimes. Now there was a point where
exactly.
Tina has a young lady that's a part of her life for a period of her story, but by and large you didn't see that. So I found that interesting as well, because as I was writing down the names of some of the key players, I'm like, there's a lot of men in their lives, but not
Yes, yes,
necessarily sisterhood. So obviously that was
exactly,
an intentional
exactly.
choice.
Yes, because it also shows that the lack of sisterhood, that if if you don't have girlfriends that tell you as it is, and that was why Keisha in the book was really towards the end telling Tina, like, don't you have
Mm-hmm.
friends, don't you have family? And she was the one trying to be more real with her, even though she
Mm-hmm.
also made the mistake in the beginning because she thought, oh, by connecting her with somebody would be good, but it ended up being bad, right?
Right.
But I
Right.
wanted to show that, and I also made the characters reflect on that wow, once one person has been taken out of their life, then they realize how lonely they are because they've made their lives all about the one person. So like
Mm-hmm.
Nancy, when she's thinking when somebody's out, she's like, I have no other people. I actually just
Right.
go to his place and to this and to that. And so that's also by choice to also
Mm-hmm.
show that if you do not create community, if you do not create kind of your friendship circle, men will derail you and destroy
Woo
your
child.
life. If you do not have,
You saw look on my face.
if
Woo
you,
child.
they will do that if you do not have, we call like the boardrooms, where you can go to the boardrooms and discuss,
Mm-hmm.
with either your sisters or people you trust to give you that support. So
Yeah, yeah. So yeah, that was definitely noticeable to me just in seeing that. But there is well, there are a couple of men obviously that are part of their lives in different ways. We're gonna start with Tobias though, because
yes,
he is Nancy's son and Tina's older brother. So
yes.
he is not a lead character per se, but his story is very important as well because we can see the dynamics between the two of them and how he kind of
Mm,
fits in the middle of all of that.
yes, yeah, no, absolutely. And I didn't want to center a story because I wanted to center the women, but we get to learn a lot about Tobias through their
Mhm.
own interactions, where you know is the apple of Nancy's eye, right? I mean, that's our baby, that's our boy. And then for Tina is a little bit of like a little father figure that's always scolding her or trying. And
Mhm.
then there is one scene towards the end, which is actually one of my favorite scenes, where Tina and Tobias are laughing about
Mhm.
something, and then they're laughing and laughing and laughing, and then Tobias starts to cry
Mhm. Mhm.
because he's the only one that actually remembers his dad
Mhm. Mhm.
from his childhood, right? Mom's
Mhm.
friend.
Mom's friend.
So, so,
Yes.
so, mom's friend. So that is a character where is a very strong character. His presence is very strong on the page, but I wanted you to see him through the interactions with the women, in the
Mhm.
book. So
Mhm. Yes. And so, okay, we're going to go back to Lars because Lars, of course, Lars looms large
oh
throughout
my
the
word.
entirety of the story.
Yes.
So, I mean, and
Yeah.
just from a characterization point of view, Was it a challenge to write him, or was it kind of okay? I'm just looking because you already mentioned someone who's narcissistic on the page. Did you just kind
Yeah.
of take like, okay, these are things that a narcissist would do in a relationship, and you just kind of craft him that way, or how did you really
So
develop
it's a
him?
mix. It's a mix of different things, right? It's a mix of like when you go to Africa and you see a lot of this kind of white men that have been calcified on the continent,
Mm,
meaning they know everything about the culture in and out, and some of them feel like mini gods there, right?
mm,
And so I wanted to take that character and say, a character like that on the surface might feel like, oh, he cares about my culture, he cares about this, but but it's actually more of a colonizing kind of love or colonizing
mm,
kind of presence. And so I wanted to bring him on the page and then deconstruct him to say,
mm,
think about it. If you think about that department where Nancy used to go, all the other professors that studied different places, they wore things from that place, whether it's a danshiki or beads or
right.
things from. Lars never wore anything
Mm-hmm.
from Gambia, not on his body. Like you would not know. In fact, I write in the book that nobody knew he spoke the languages
Right.
unless, unless people close to him or like his department. And so I wanted to show how easy it was for him to just slip in and out of his privilege when he wanted it. So
Mm,
he wasn't like really fighting for the culture. It was just wearing it when it suited him. Like someone says, playing
mm,
dress up, and there are many people like that. So I wanted to show that on the page. Uh, like a character like this, in his mind, he thinks he's good, he thinks he's benevolent, he thinks he is learning everything, but it's his own way to actually get what he wants, which is control and manipulation. So,
one of the things about someone like a Lars is that we see people like that now. No, they may not be quote
yes,
unquote colonizers, but there are people who may want to try on African or black culture, that or learn
yes,
the music or learn the lingo or do certain things and make it seem like they're
yes,
really down for a certain cause, but in reality,
yes,
they're not. Because how are they
yes,
voting? Are they going out and fighting
yes,
when different things are
exactly.
happening in the world? All those sorts of things. So that's what Lars reminds me of.
No, absolutely. And I think what makes, like, it's okay to learn other people's cultures, right?
Right.
It's okay if you want to get deep, dive deeper. I mean, I work as a travel writer. I love to do that, but it is what he does afterwards. It is
Right.
once you start seeing all the things in his characters, it is I don't want to give anything away,
Yeah.
but how he becomes who he later becomes in the book and what he does to others along the way is
Right.
what shows his true character.
Right. Right, exactly. But yes, are you doing it out of really because you really care and you love and you want to be a part of this? Or are you doing it because, hey, I look at these people as people I can control or, take it and use it against them later?
Yes, exactly. Exactly.
Yeah, because I heard somebody talking about that the other day, saying, "Yeah, you go to someone and you share your vulnerabilities with a person, and then next thing you know, they're throwing your vulnerabilities back in your face." So
Yes,
something very
and that's the
similar to that.
worst.
Yeah,
Yeah,
that's
that's
the
the
worst.
worst. That's the worst.
That is the worst. That is the worst. So of course, we have not talked about his brother. I love his brother
Mm.
also. So he's not just manipulative with, Malik and Nancy. He's just manipulative in general.
Yeah.
But
No,
his brother,
he's a crappy person.
yes, he's a crappy person. So Leaf, I loved him.
Yes, yes. That's my second favorite character. So my
Yes.
two favorite male characters are Malik and Leif. And
Hmm.
all the other characters I had an idea of before I started writing the book. Leif was the only character that kind of materialized on the page. So I didn't know about him
Hmm.
before, or really, it just kind of, and I wanted to create a character. First of all, talk about marginalized communities that come together, because there's something about
Yes.
marginalized communities, they kind of get drawn to each other. I'm sure you realized or you knew about this whole like gingers are black thing that happened
Mm.
recently, where they said people that are redhead are probably black. in their
Mm,
soul.
wow.
But and then they started coming up on TikTok crying and saying how they were bullied by white people, like their fellow white people, and how they were all, over centuries said they had no soul. So that's also a marginalized group within the white
Hmm.
culture, right? And so those groups tend to gravitate towards each other, and then
Right.
other kinds of marginalized groups tend to gravitate. So I wanted to create a character like Leaf and have that friendship with Nancy, and then the relationship with the other kids, with her
Mm,
kids. So that's a character. I don't want to give anything away. I want
mm,
like readers to
mm,
just discover him on the page, but I think that's a character. And then it also talks about it against the backdrop of some world and societal things going on as well. So
right.
addressing that as well. But
Right.
yeah,
I,
Leaf,
I love him because I
Leaf.
mean it's interesting that he wasn't an early character because as you all read, he plays a central role in some things that are going on. So, especially
Yes.
in their lives. So I'm glad to hear that you felt the need to bring someone like him in, and it's hard for me to believe he wasn't there from the beginning just because of the
No,
role
no,
that
he
he played.
wasn't. He
He
wasn't.
wasn't
No, it really
there.
wasn't. And you can see, it really wasn't. And you can see when he gets introduced, it's kind of a little bit further down, in the
Hmm.
book when he actually comes into the picture.
Hmm. Hmm. Now, again, going back to Tina, because Tina is this
Yes.
young person who is, center stage and, she's
Yes.
doing things and making mistakes. But she has this love in her life that we meet
Mm.
at the very beginning, Sebastian or Sebi or Seb,
Yes.
that he's
Yes.
called
Seb.
throughout
Yes.
throughout the story. And I enjoy him as well, but he's also a very interesting character. And to your earlier point, people that find themselves marginalized for one reason or another, we see that with him as well.
Yes. So Sebastian is on paper is supposed to be a really like physically stunning person, like a kind of guy that if he walks down the street, you turn around like, okay, God, I see what you did there, right? Is that kind of is that
Right.
kind of person, but filled with insecurity, just
Mm,
the most insecure man. And
mm,
then he meets Tina when he's insecure and vulnerable, and then he trauma bonds with her. And
mm,
so what I also wanted to show is that sometimes a relationship can feel healthy, but it may just be a trauma bond. So
mhm,
until you give it distance and space and time, that's when you can truly see if it's meant to be
mhm.
something more. And so that's what I wanted to do with Sebastian. I mean, Sebastian in the book plays for the national team on Sweden and is also a model,
Mhm.
and the way he looks, I actually modeled him after another player that used to play on the national team that had this kind of on his face. If he was angry, you saw every emotion because his eyes
Mhm.
were really, really bright and piercing. So
Mhm.
on his face, every emotion you could play. And so I modeled kind of how this character was after that guy because you could see, read everything. And so that's what this Sebastian character is in the book. He's just well known, plays on the national team, but still very insecure.
Right, and that tells you something right there because you can't always believe, well now it's social media, but I mean always it's been this way. When you see people that hit like these really high highs in their career or in their lives, and you think, oh wow, everything is perfect or everything should be perfect, or and especially in this case he's a white person, a white Swedish man who's beautiful, so you would think, oh, his life is perfect. He's probably got money. He's probably can have all the women he wants, all these different things that you would automatically assume, but it's not really the case. And so
Yeah,
it says something for, I mean, and we're not always going to know the inner lives or the backstories of people, but it's just something to be
no,
mindful of. So when somebody does do something that you don't agree with, or they make a
yes.
mistake or whatever, to maybe have a little bit more grace
Yeah,
for the things
absolutely,
that are
absolutely.
happening because you don't really know who they are.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And even with Sebastian, I mean, Nancy didn't like him. She doesn't like him up until the very end, and he was still trying to um, to win her grace, to like to say, am I enough for you, Nancy? Am I enough for your daughter? Am I enough? This is like you said, this is a guy that could get whatever I wanted, but no, this was he wanted to because he saw something in Nancy and in Tina that he wanted to be a part of. All right.
Mm-hmm.
So
And the other thing that's interesting in the story between him and Tina is that we do, over the course of time, as this book takes place, the story takes place, we get to see what happens as people who may have come together for one reason and how it grows or falls apart or whatever the case may be. And I could
yes,
appreciate that you did that with these characters, because it's true that, maybe the person you met at 15, they could be your forever, or maybe they're not. And
exactly.
sometimes you have to go and grow through things and realize, is it just because of this quote unquote trauma bond, even though I'm sure they wouldn't have called it that, but is it just
Yes,
because we've always been together? And so we're going to be
yes,
together, or we feel like we should be together because we've always been together? Or is this really the right situation for me?
exactly, exactly. And it's only time and space that will
Mm-hmm.
always answer those questions, giving each other a break, as and being apart, and it's either absence makes you grow fonder, or out of sight, out of mind,
Right.
but
Either or.
um,
Either or.
exactly, but time and space will always, it's kind of like chipping away, something. With time, you then see the beautiful what's left of that friendship. Yeah.
What's left? Yes, because and all of it is friendship. And so, by you
Yes.
saying that, this doesn't just apply to romantic situations; it applies to
Exactly.
friendships as well. All types of
Exactly.
relationships. There are ebbs and flows, and sometimes we like each other, sometimes we don't.
Exactly. Exactly.
Mhm, mhm. But just thinking about Nancy and Tina and their lives, apart, and the parallels within their lives, and looking at, Nancy as his mother who has had two children under two different circumstances, right? And
Yeah.
you mentioned at the top, it's about a mother and a daughter, and, grace of daughters for mothers and things like that.
Mm.
But understanding that, rightfully or wrongfully, the relationship between children can be different based upon
Yes.
where the mama is at the time, her mindset, her heart space when she has the child. And we see that play out
Mm.
as well.
Yes. No, absolutely. I mean, again, without giving spoilers, it's not really a spoiler, because you find out like within like by the second page. But Tina looks exactly like her dad, you know,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
and which is again a constant reminder for Nancy of a life, or the life she thought she was going to have, or the life that was stolen from her, or whatever she did, right? So, and then Tobias, looks like Nancy,
Mm-hmm.
and so there's a lot of just even that physicality uh, can dictate the amount of love or not that the parent is willing. I mean, she loves her daughter, no doubt,
Right.
but
Right.
um, it was just easier to love Tobias more than Tina.
Yeah.
And I show that a
Yeah.
lot in the book, when they were young and the different things they did. So,
Mm-hmm. And that's something, because I'm just thinking that that's a hard thing to work through as a child, because of course you're not going to understand that, and maybe the mom
yeah,
doesn't even really realize that that's what she's doing. I'm not just in this book, but just in general, she may not even
yeah,
realize that's what she's doing, but that's what's
yeah.
happening.
No,
Mm-hmm.
absolutely, absolutely. And I think that's why, this book, a lot of people, I hope, will connect with it in terms of different relationships, either with their mothers or their siblings, or the things they noticed, and realizing, okay, this is, maybe mom went through some things, when
Mm-hmm.
she when she had me, or she had my sibling, or this, and mothers try to carry things with as much grace as they can, so that the kids don't feel it, but the kids can see and sense and know, there's something that must have happened in mom's past that's
Mm-hmm.
making her this way with us,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
so
Yeah. Yeah. And Nancy also has a brother that she had some different type of
Yeah.
relationship with as well. So she's been through some things, as we all, go
Yes.
through different things. But then again, it's interesting to see how sometimes things are parallel later on in life.
Yes.
Things that you went
Yes.
through
No,
and then you see
absolutely.
it show up later.
Yes. No,
Mhm.
absolutely. And I think with our brother, one thing I wanted to talk about is just this sense of entitlement men just have. That
Mhm.
things are supposed to be them first. They are supposed to be chosen first, and then women
Mhm.
are default. And I think that's what happened with Nancy and her brother because Nancy was the one that got to go to Sweden and he didn't.
Mhm.
And so that
Mhm.
obviously destroyed that relationship because he felt entitled to that
Mhm.
opportunity. With Nancy's dad, I wanted to create a loving relationship between, Nancy and her dad, the really great relationship. But the mom was always serving him, even though it was lovely
Mhm.
with his daughter. There was still this kind of strong patriarchal kind of environment. And
Right.
so I wanted to tackle a lot of that kind of sense of entitlement with men as well. And the same sense of entitlement is with Lars.
Yes.
Is also sense of entitlement because I know you and your home am entitled to you. So
Yeah, I'm entitled to you. I can do whatever I want with whomever I want, and you're just supposed to take it.
yes,
But and
exactly,
well,
exactly.
we're not gonna get too much into it. But then there's also we see a level of cowardice within him, because he's like, I'm doing all these
Yes,
things, but yet there are ways in which he's a coward. But y'all got to read the book to get.
he's not doing it with it. He's not doing it with his chest, and we'll leave it
Yes,
like that.
yes, yeah. Because if you're gonna be an
He's not
asshole,
doing
be
it with
an
his chest.
asshole. Stand in
With
that.
your chest, exactly.
So yeah,
Full chest. No.
that he does not do. But then,
Yeah.
as stories go, there are things that, as again, it's in the first couple pages, not giving anything away, but there are ways
Yes.
in which these people who have maybe not been a part of each other's lives find their way a part of each other's lives again, and we get to see how it all plays out. Now, Bitter
Mm.
Honey is the name. So the name of the book, what is it that well, I know what it is because I've read it, but Bitter Honey, where does the actual title come from?
So the original title was actually The Deepest Well. So that was
Hmm.
the original title. It was after a Swedish proverb that says the deepest well can also be drained. So I wanted to give that to like
Mm.
Nancy's story about just everything draining. That's why she has
Mhm.
nothing to give Tina. But then, we took it to the publisher, we tested it out, and it just felt like it was like a thriller, mysterious thriller, horror kind of sound to it.
Mhm.
So I went back, brainstorming, and so I came back up with bitter honey. That's something so sweet
Mhm.
can also be bitter. Honey
Mhm.
is the color of Tina's eyes. It's the color of Lars's eyes. So they've got this kind of like light amber, yellowish honey eyes. And so that was something that was maybe in the beginning sweet with kindness and
Mhm.
becomes bitter with, over time. So,
Bitter over time. Bitter over time.
yeah.
Yes, that's
Mhm.
something. I want to touch on one more thing on Tina, and then I want to hear about what you're doing on your U.S. tour because at the
Yes.
time of this recording, you haven't, it's not out here in the U.S. yet. So we're going to encourage people to go ahead and pick up a copy and then come see you. But one thing also in telling Tina's story, we get to see her as an artist and
Yes.
leaning into that. So I think of you, like, no, you're not a musician that I know of because you do all kinds of things, Lola.
Yes.
But we look at someone who has a creative heart, who creative spirit, and she gets that honest as well, being a creative
Yes.
person, but also as she's growing, looking at how she wants to show up as a creative, how she wants to express her
Yes.
art, and how others will try to co-opt your talent
Yes.
and turn it into what they want it to be versus you really being able to step out and be where you want it to be. And we see that a lot happening
Yes.
with Tina through the story.
Yes. No, absolutely. And I think maybe part of that I might have drawn from my own experience too as a storyteller, as an artist, because I mean, even before we got In Every Mirror She's Black published, a lot of people wanted me to change it, to change the message, to make it softer, to make it feel good. And I said, no, this is a story that needed to be told as rawly as possible. I do a lot of different things. I'm a travel photographer in an industry
Mhm.
where it's mostly male white guys. And I always
Mhm.
joke that it's white guys that look like they went to climb Everest and then came back down and then model for GQ right away. All right.
Right,
So there's
right.
that I'm fighting against. But people just want me to tell a certain kind of stories because I'm African, African descent, even like I'm African American, Nigerian American, but also African descent. And so I want to be able to write about Greenland. I want to be able to spend time with the Greenlandic Inuits, right? And write those stories. Why does it have to only be because I'm
Right.
Nigerian, I have to write Nigerian stories? So those are the things I fight against in terms of stereotypes and breaking down those doors so that other black writers and black travel photographers and black travel storytellers can write about anything around the world, right? And so looking at that, like with Tina's story, she ended up being a poet, right? That was who she
Hmm.
was supposed to be. And so
Right.
that was what was struggling to come out against all of that. And so it's again about listening to your voice, seeing, okay, what feels right for me. And
Hmm.
and you said that, I do a lot of things. I do a lot of things. I'm a multi-potentialite. I do lots of creative things. But I always say, because I also play a little bit of guitar, but I said
Oh,
God
okay. So
did
you are
not
a
give me a
musician too.
singing voice. No, no,
Okay.
no, 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 no. I won't consider myself that. I said God did not give me a singing voice
Not
because
the
if I
singing
had
voice.
that,
Okay.
then I'll be, yeah, insufferable. like, like, so God is like, nope, you're not gonna get that. Stick with some of the other gifts I'm giving you.
Right.
So no, I can't sing. Even, I love music. I play very crappy guitar a little bit, but I'm not a musician. No way.
All
I wish I
right. Well,
was, but I'm not.
yes. And I used to sing a little bit. I haven't done it, but they
Oh,
say if you don't use
amazing.
it, you lose it. But I need to,
Ah,
I need to start doing that again, just
warm up
because
that
I
voice
enjoy
again.
it. Yes, warm it up,
Yes,
get it going again, because it's something about,
yes,
returning to those things that you always loved. But as I
exactly.
mentioned, your book, Bitter Honey, is not out yet. It will be out on November the 4th here in the US. So I'm going to encourage
Yes,
people to get copies. I'm just sharing right now the Brown Girl Collective Bookstore, which is affiliated with Bookshop. So if you like to shop through Bookshop, you can go there now and find Bitter Honey at the top of the page. So if you want to go ahead and pre-order, because pre-orders are always so, so, so very important for
yes,
authors when they're
yes,
coming out. I know it's already out in the UK, and I believe it's going to be out in some other
yes,
places as well if it's not already. But
yes,
here for the US, for us,
yes,
literally us, we want to make sure
yes,
that we are picking up copies of the book. And,
absolutely.
we'll,
And we've got a pre-order contest going as well.
okay, so tell us
So
about that.
yes, exactly. So if you pre-order and just send me a copy, through my DMs or share on stories and tag that you've pre-ordered, I've got like a box filled with some of my favorite things, that
Ooh.
I can show. Rob, can you help me get that little box so I can show? Yeah. That's gonna be filled with some of my favorite things, like goodies I like to eat. See that?
Ooh, I'm jealous.
And
I
some
didn't get
things
one of them.
and
I'm jealous.
and some just some of things I love to
I
use,
love it.
and so I'm doing that, running that pre-order contest. So if people pre-order, they're gonna be in the running to get one of these boxes. It's
That's
a
a
great box
beautiful
of
box too. And so like
full of
That's representative of
yes,
Nancy, and then we have Tina
yes,
here represented. But yeah, that's a beautiful
yes,
box. I love that. Like I said, I'm
yes.
a little jealous, y'all. So yeah, go ahead and do that. Go ahead and pre-order and send the information to Lola for an
Yes,
opportunity to get that beautiful box. But in terms of your
yes,
US tour, just give us a little, insight into what that's gonna look
yes. No, absolutely. I'm so excited. It's going to be coast to coast. And so on November 4th, we start in Chicago and then go to LA and then Houston and then Atlanta. Excited. Baltimore, DC, Philly, and New York. And so I've already announced the dates on my public profiles, so you can see all the links, to the different places to register. But it's going to be 8 cities. Really super excited to see the community and just people that have been fans and great supporters of my work on the grassroots level. I'm just super thrilled to be able to at least to do this. So 8 cities, including Atlanta.
Yes, I'm excited about that because with your last two books, we did them together. And of course, I was a little late in the game. So, but this time I'm at the front end. So I get to see you when
Yes,
you come to town. So I'm really excited
yes.
about that. And I would encourage others, as you can see at the bottom, we've been scrolling the places where you can find out where you can follow Lola, where you can reach out, you can let her know that you pre-order, or after you've read the book, you can reach out and tell her how much you love it, all that stuff. So please do that, and look for her to be here in the US in the month of November. So Lola, as always, it's such a pleasure to talk to you, to have you join us from Sweden. I'm sure there's some people that Black people live
Yes,
in Sweden,
yes.
but hey, Black people live everywhere, okay?
Yes, we're everywhere. We're everywhere.
We are everywhere. Don't believe
So,
the hype. We might not be on the
yes.
postcards or whatever, but we're everywhere. We
We're
are
there. We're
everywhere.
there. We're there.
We're there. So
Yes.
I'm gonna let you grab some water. I will be with you in just a second, and I'm gonna give everybody the announcement of next week's book. But again, as always, it's a pleasure to talk to you, and I look forward to
Thank
meeting
you
you in
so
person
much.
soon. All right, and see you in just a
Likewise,
second.
likewise. Thank you.
See you in just a moment. All right, everybody. Thank you so much for being here for this world premiere of my conversation with Lola Ákínmádé. I love her so much. She's a joy to talk to always. She's a wealth of knowledge. She's super creative. And I know she's probably going to get those voice lessons. So maybe the next time she'll sing us a tune. So I'll be looking forward to that. So please, as we've already mentioned, go ahead and pre-order your copies of Bitter Honey, and or plan to meet her when she's on tour and pick up a copy then and get your book signed. So just as a means of announcement, next week we will actually have a bookstore owner turn author with us next week, and that is Janine A. Cook. She will be here to talk about her book, It's Me, They Follow. And let me see, just so I can tell you, she owns Harriet's in Philadelphia, Ida's in South Jersey, and Josephine's, a literary installation in Paris. So I look forward to having her with us next week to talk about her latest release, or her new release, It's Me, They Follow. So looking forward to that. And again, as always, everyone, thank you for being here. Thank you for watching this episode. And we look for, and Lola in the background saying she loves Janine. So yes, so she'll be here next week. So again, to everyone, thank you so much for watching as always. And also go back and look at the earlier conversation that I had with Lola. It will be linked to this video so you can see when we met a couple years ago. So thanks again, as always, for being here, and we'll see you again real soon. Take care. Bye-bye.